guys, it is April from Getting Yoga With It. Today I wanted to share with you my IVF story and my journey that I took very recently. I am currently 16 weeks pregnant, which feels amazing, and I wanted to share with you how that IVF journey felt for us and what was kind of involved in it. So let's get into it. So we did our IVF cycle end of November to like early December, and it was an intense process, I will say. Preparing for it was something that I was doing for a long time. I was on all sorts of supplements for like a year prior that would help with my low ovarian reserve. That's what I should probably start with. I have low ovarian reserve, if you don't know already. And that is probably the biggest issue and the biggest hurdle with our infertility is my low ovarian reserve. So when I first went to the clinic, I had 11 follicles, which was low. It went up to 15 at one point, which was amazing. And then it dropped right down to 8. And I ended up with 8 follicles for the IVF cycle. And the follicles all have, or many of them will have eggs in them. So with IVF, you want as many eggs to work with as humanly possible because it gives your chance of IVF working, a real shot. So I was dealing with 8, and I had been on all of these supplements for about a year to try and really improve my egg quality. I did a whole video on that a while ago now, but I was on all of those supplements. So I'll link that below for you so you can go and check out what they are. The only thing that I did differently really between my normal cycles and my IVF cycles was ubiquinol coenzyme Q10. So ubiquinol is a more potent version of coenzyme Q10. And from days 3 to 7, I went kind of overboard with ubiquinol. I ended up taking 800 milligrams a day from days 3 until 7 of that cycle. And the hope for me was to give my eggs some extra energy for the cycle so that they could do their work. I don't know if it worked, but I mean, it did work. IVF worked, but I don't know if it was this that made it work. But that was the only big change that I did. I have also really upped my vitamin D over time. Oh, here it is. I was taking 4,000 IUs right through. Like, I think that other video I did, I said I was going to do 2,000 IUs of vitamin D, but I upped it to 4,000, and I could probably have gone higher than that. So that's really all I did differently. I wasn't, doing much else differently. I was doing keto at the time, the ketogenic diet. I'm not not clean keto. Let me just say, I was drinking wine still, a while on keto. I was not drinking wine when I was doing IVF. I stopped drinking wine. I stopped drinking coffee all through the IVF cycle. But yeah, that's really all I did. Now, starting the cycle itself was pretty simple. Before your cycle began, or my cycle began, they needed to kind of regulate my cycle. So they put me on these patches that you put on like one bum cheek one day and took it off, and then one bum cheek the other day. And that was really just to regulate your cycle until you got your period. And then once I got my period, it was like, the cycle has begun for IVF. It's game time. You're done with the patches. And then I moved straight into shots. So you're giving yourself the shots, which I know a lot of women struggle with, or just a lot of people struggle with needles. It's uncomfortable. It's like not a very comfortable thing to think of, like looking at a needle and then putting it in your body. So there were all sorts of medications that I was on. I don't remember each and every one of them. I remember the most expensive one for us was Gonalef. It was most expensive for us because they put me on the maximum dose of all of these shots. Because I have low ovarian reserve, they were like, let's not kid around. Let's go for the gold here. All of these shots and these hormones that they put in you are meant to take the follicles that you have and make them all dominant. Whereas like most of the time in your cycle, your normal cycle, one of the follicles will become dominant all on its own and push out an egg, and then you hope that you'll have a baby. For IVF, they're like, we're going for the gold. We're taking all of them and making them all dominant, and then we'll go in and extract the eggs. So I personally found the shots easy. Now, I am dealing with a little bit of cushion, so it wasn't nerve-wracking to put a needle with the needle was about this long. Putting those in, into my body, it was just going straight into fat. And so it wasn't nerve-wracking. I can understand for, slimmer women, slender women, like it can be a bit nerve-wracking, but I didn't feel anything. It didn't hurt at all, like not even a little bit for me. So that was good. The shots ended up being like the easiest part, I would say. And luckily I didn't have any crazy side effects to them. Because it's hormones, some people have said that it makes them feel like much more emotional in all ways. I didn't feel more emotional. I'm already emotional, but it didn't get more heightened, I don't think. So while I was doing the shots, I was also doing ultrasound. So I'd drive to the clinic, usually every second day, and do an ultrasound to see like what are the follicles like and counting them. And over the course of about a week and a half, I would say, they determined, okay, you've got 8 dominant follicles. Let's get them to like the biggest that they can, and then we'll do the trigger shot. So it was usually every second day, but at the last it did become every day for like 3 days. I was having ultrasounds and chatting with the nurse, and that was a bit intense. I will say that was intense, just the driving back and forth and being away from work in the mornings a little bit. It was sometimes a little intense, but at the same time, I was only doing this once, so it wasn't a huge deal. So they determined, okay, you've got really 8 major follicles here. And once they were big enough for them, they gave me a trigger shot. So I gave myself the trigger shot. They gave me the packages. So that night I went home, and I think there were 2 of them, and I put one on one side of my tummy and then one on the other. And then we waited for 36 hours. And 36 hours later exactly is when I would actually ovulate. And that's when they'd go in for the retrieval. So November 29th was retrieval / extraction day. I was nervous because it's an intense process. You're in an operating room, and they literally go in to your ovaries and extract the eggs. So they give you drugs, and I was very happy that they give you drugs. I was nervous about it because, I know a few people who've done IVF, and maybe half of those people have said that the egg retrieval hurt them a lot. And so I told the doctor and the nurse and literally anyone who would listen going into it, I was like, I'm really nervous. I heard it hurts. Can you give me more drugs? And so I think they knew going into it, I'm going to need a little bit more help. So, you know, you're not completely out. I should say that. I was not completely out. You're kind of like a little bit loopy. And there was only one part where I was like, no, give me more drugs. And then they did. And I was completely out at that point, I think. I don't really remember. But Barry did say that I sang Beyonce. So that's awkward. I don't remember that, and it might be a lie. So after the extraction itself, which was probably, I don't know, 45 minutes or something. I didn't like count the time because I couldn't because I was so loopy, but it's a bit of a process. I was transferred into like the recovery room, and you're not the only one in the recovery room. There are plenty of other people. There were other people who had gone in for their retrievals and were getting their results, and there were probably people in there who were doing transfers. It's a large room, and I kind of woke up. I was kind of in and out. I woke up and Barry was there, and the nurse came over and said, okay, so you had 8 follicles. We got 6 eggs out of those follicles. So that's another thing that not everyone knows, is that like just because you have 8 follicles doesn't mean all of them will have eggs in them. So you're hoping that they'll all have eggs, of course, but yeah, I had 6, which was not horrible. I was pretty happy with that considering my low ovarian reserve. Me from the future, I forgot entirely to mention Barry's part because we needed Barry in order to make IVF work. So the day of the egg extraction, Barry went into the back, did his thing. He ejaculated into a little cup. They took the cup, and it was from that that they found the right sperm to make the embryos. I'm not sure if they washed them. Sometimes they'll wash them in this machine that keeps only the best quality sperm and throws out the others. And they used ICSI for us, which means that they actually took the sperm and put it into the egg. And that was what we were signing up for with this IVF journey. So we left that day only knowing that, and then the 5-day wait started, and that was intense. The next day, we heard from them early in the day, and they said, okay, so you had 6 eggs retrieved. Of those, only 4 of the eggs were mature enough. The other 2 were immature. They would never have become babies. So we were dealing with 4 mature eggs. And I was like, oh my goodness, that reduces my chances. But then they said all 4 of those eggs were fertilized and like became fertilized and like took it. And so that was a huge win for us. I was so happy that all 4 fertilized. That was a huge, huge thing for us. And so we started calling them the Fantastic Four, and then we had to wait. They were aiming for a 5-day transfer. That is apparently the best. I shouldn't say that, but at least at my clinic, and every clinic is different, they aim for 5 days because they can watch the embryo getting going through the stages that they're supposed to go through. They can see the quality of the embryos and see if they're gonna make it or not. So the 5-day wait was long. It was long, and I have never been that nervous in my entire life because I had no control and I'm just waiting for these embryos to do something, and like you're waking up each morning like, did we lose one? I have no idea because you're not hearing from the clinic every day, or I wasn't at least. I lost weight. I think I lost like 5 or 6 pounds. You can't tell now. I've gained it all back. But I was just that nervous. I was throwing up. Like I was barely eating. It just took over my life and I couldn't concentrate. We were just waiting. We only really heard from the doctor's office about a day before the transfer day to say, okay, we are gonna do a transfer, because I was like, maybe there's nothing. And anyway, so our transfer day was on December 4th, and we knew going in that at least one of our embryos must have gotten to a point that they would allow us to do a transfer. So we were happy about that, but we knew nothing about the others. We didn't know about all of our 4, like how many made it or anything. So I had to go in with a full bladder, and I'm telling you, that was so hard. I know it's silly, but I was sitting there in the waiting room with full bladder, and I knew I had an hour before the procedure even started, and I was like, oh, I'm dying. And we finally saw the doctor about 15 minutes before the transfer was set to happen. And he sat down with us and he said, one of your embryos has died. It didn't make it. 2 of your embryos are fair, but they're not good. And we only freeze good or like excellent embryos. One of those like fair, good ones is like borderline. So we're gonna watch it for the rest of the day and we'll let you know. I didn't get a very good vibe that like something good was going to happen from that. I didn't think that was really going to work. And then he said, one of them is excellent. I think he said it's beautiful. And that was really nice. And that's the little baby that I have inside me now. We decided to transfer that embryo. And that was our best shot, and we went for it. The transfer itself was pretty straightforward. You're back in the operating room. There are like tons of people around you. I will say that. Your legs are wide open. There are like lots of nurses. The embryologist came out and talked to us, which was really nice. And she was the one who, I think, made our embryo and then watched the embryo over the 5-day period. And so that was nice. She came out to say hi. And then my doctor was doing the actual procedure. So it was interesting because they were kind of yelling back and forth. The embryologist was in a back room talking to my doctor. I think she was placing the embryo in like a tube. And then he had a catheter inside of me into my uterus. And they were yelling at each other about like when they should place it into the uterus and where, and like they were just communicating each other, and they weren't yelling at each other, but it was really interesting to witness, and we could see it on a screen. I'm going to insert that photo here. I don't know if you saw, like, there's actually the catheter, and then the bright white section is the embryo itself. So we watched it happen. Barry took a picture that you just saw, and it was good. Like, it was emotional and really nerve-wracking because I wanted it all to go perfectly. But you know, it didn't hurt or anything. Like, transfer feels like a really long pap smear. It's uncomfortable, but you can stand it, you know? I didn't need any drugs for it or anything, so I was fine. And then we were brought out. I think I actually walked out. You didn't need to, you know, wheel me out or anything. We walked out over to the recovery room, and I sat down in a chair, and I just started bawling my eyes out. I think I was just like, it's finally over. Like, all of that waiting, all of that preparation, everything that we've gone through, here it is. Like, it's either going to work or it's not. And I was thinking a lot about our other baby that we lost and crying about that, feeling a little bit of guilt, if I'm being honest. But it was just so emotional, so many things going through my head. The nurse kept coming over and being like, are you okay? Like, did it not go well? And I was like, no, it's fine. It went well. Like, it's inside me. But it was just really emotional. She kept offering me cookies, which is nice. Anyway, so And then we went home, and we had to do the, 2-week wait like everybody else, except it's slightly shorter. But that was kind of it. We were just waiting at that point. But while we were waiting, I did get a lovely little call from one of my nurses, and she called to tell me that that one embryo that was borderline fair to good, they watched over the course of that day, and it progressively got better and better and better. And it was so good, they were able to freeze it. So we have another embryo frozen, which is amazing. Again, it doesn't guarantee that it will survive the thaw to do a transfer, but it's a good chance. I think it's 86% of frozen embryos will be able to be used, will be able to be transferred. So we are very optimistic about that and really, really happy about that. I was so blown away. Like, I think I screamed on the phone with her because she must have been like, what is happening? But I was not expecting it. With low ovarian reserve, I didn't even really expect for IVF at all to work. Like, yeah. So the fact that I was technically pregnant and had a frozen embryo was, it was just the best feeling. It was so good, and I'm still really happy about it. It feels weird knowing that I have a child in a freezer. That's odd, but I'm so grateful for it. And then the 2-week wait was over. I actually was very sneaky and started testing probably too early. I took a test like 5 days past the 5-day transfer, so it would have been 10 days past ovulation. I took a cheapy dollar store test, and it was negative, and I was so upset. I was so disappointed. And then the next morning, at like 3 o'clock in the morning, I was like, I should probably use like a first response, like the good ones. So I did. I used it at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I saw a little line. So this would have been 11 days past ovulation. For me, it was 6 days past the 5-day transfer. And there was a second line, and it was a good line. So that was December 10th that we found out that we were pregnant, because I told Barry right away. I woke him up. I was like, you have to wake up. You can look at this line with me, because I think I am pregnant. I think it worked. And it did. And then we literally couldn't go back to sleep. Like, that was it. We were awake for the day. We just could not stop smiling. We were just over the moon that it worked. I should say that I did a blood test on December 17th as well. And that came out back very reassuring. That's a whole other story, but essentially they called me and they're like, yeah, your HCG levels are extremely high. They were so high they thought it might be twins. It's just one, but yeah, so that's really the story about my IVF journey. I'm sorry this was a little bit long, but I actually filmed this before and it ended up being like 30 something minutes. So I thought I'd try to cut it down, and this is me cut down. But that was my IVF journey. It was really intense. I would do it again. It was not as hard as I thought it was going to be. Emotionally, it was hella hard. Physically, it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So yeah. Let me know in the comments below if you have any other questions about IVF or my low ovarian reserve or anything surrounding that, infertility. I'm an open book pretty much. So leave your comments or questions below. And thank you guys again so much for rooting for us and being so happy for us that IVF worked. It really means so much to have like this wonderful network of supporters for that, because it's so hard to go through infertility. So thank you. And yeah, I'll talk with you soon. Okay, bye guys.